Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host FAISAL and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, it's been more than a year that illegitimate state of Israel continues to destabilize whole of the region. Situation in West Asia or Middle East is very volatile. Palestinians and Lebanese are still anxiously waiting for peace. But Israel is continuously using the genocidal war to expand its campaign to occupy more territories. It's unfortunate that Israel is still using starvation, hunger, thirst, and no medical treatment to the Palestinians as a weapon of war. They are also using the enforced displacement against the Palestinians. Its occupation forces continues their war crimes, genocidal intent, and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, especially in Gaza, and through the siege, ground invasion, and aerial bombardment. Worst thing is that the Western countries, including United States, Germany, UK, and lots of others, are still supplying weapons, arms, ammunition, bombs, missiles to the Zionist state. And as a result of it, there are at least 43,764 Palestinians killed and 103,490 Palestinians have been injured so far after October 7, 2023. While in Lebanon, the situation is not entirely different. As estimated, 3,445 people have been killed so far and 14,599 injured, while at least 1.3 million Lebanese already displaced to the neighboring countries. Due to the West Asian or the Middle East situation, a special session of Organization of Islamic Countries and Arab League held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which emphasized upon an independent state of Palestine, retrieval of all occupation forces from the occupied lands, accountability of Israel, all implementation of all United Nations Security Council resolutions in letter and spirit, and lot more. There is another United Nations report surfaced which confirmed the genocidal war of Israel in the occupied territories, particularly after the invasion of Gaza. Situation is really very sophisticated. It's very alarming. It's threatening whole of the region right now. To talk on this very important matter, which links not only to the Middle East but also to the other regions as well. We have in our studios to talk on this TANVEER Sultan AWAN sir. He is the geopolitical analyst. Most welcome to you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And with him, Dr. SAJID KHATTAK. He is the Mid Eastern expert. Most welcome to you, Dr. SAJID. Thank you very much for your presence. And we have online joining us Dr. WASEEM ISHAQUE. He is the international relation expert. Most welcome to you, Dr. WASEEM. Thank you very much for your presence. And my first question to you, Dr. Sajid, that how do you see the recently held OIC Arab League summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which really emphasized upon the independent state of Palestine, the end of occupation, the implementation of the UNSC resolutions, stopping Israel from the brutal aggression on Gaza and Lebanon, humanitarian isolation, and also pay compensation to the Palestinians who were damaged over the span of 1 year or more. How do you see overall conduct of this OIC Arab League session?
Thank you, Faisal, for having me on your show. I think since the start of the conflict in Gaza by Israel, there has been these kind of meetings going on at the United Nations as well as at the regional level. Independent countries are trying, but the unfortunate part of these developments is that there has been so many advocacy, there has been so many condemnations coming in of the atrocities of Israel and in favor of the Palestinians, innocent Palestinians. But the unfortunate part is that no actions are being, you can say, initiated in this regard. For example, I was reading the joint community of these OIC Arab League summit in Riyadh, and there were some 38 points, and almost all of these points were related to the verbal condemnation of the Israeli atrocities in Gaza, and they were reaffirming their commitment, to the Palestinian cause. But I believe that the Palestinians were waiting for some kind of tangible development with respect to the supply of humanitarian assistance to those areas where people are in camps, particularly the Rafah crossing and other things. But we have to keep in mind that in international relations, this realism, theory of realism is quite relevant, and it is valid, and it explains almost all the situations that you can say develop, both the classical realism and the institutional you can say, or the neo realism. For example, the Muslim states are currently constrained by the international system. They are stuck, they are dependent on the international system in a way that they cannot take independent foreign policies decisions. Internally, structurally, I mean, as far as the classical realism is concerned, internally they are constrained by their self-interest. They are confined to their own national interest, and they are unable to focus on a broader regional perspective of this conflict, because we have consistently saying that this war will not remain to the territory of Palestine, because the Israel's intentions seems to be of a greater Israel. So if the regional countries, particularly those OIC member countries and Arab League countries, if they are not taking any tangible actions, for example, because I was also saying in our previous interaction that at least they should have some military, they should show some military deterrence to the Israeli in case the war further erupts to other parts of the Middle East.
You are absolutely right,
yes.
Dr. Sajid, but unfortunately the problem is that you are referring to the Muslim countries, but the international organizations are also feeling difficulty in implementing their resolutions and decisions, and unfortunately they are also looking towards the big powers.
Exactly.
So Tanveer sir, OIC Arab League insisted the International Criminal Court to expeditiously issue arrest warrants against the Israeli civilian and the military officials for committing war crimes and genocide. Do you think that this would ever happen? Because when earlier in return to the same, the International Criminal Court's prosecutor Karim Khan faced right now he is facing a misconduct inquiry, unfortunately, and you know from where it is, and it's after the US senators, including the Senator Marco Rubio, who is now nominated or picked as a next US Secretary of State slot in upcoming Trump administration. So those senators, at least 12 senators, written a letter, the threatening letter to cut the ICC funding to half, and warned Karim Khan of serious consequences, and those serious consequences now started in the form of a misconduct inquiry. So is it possible that there would be the arrest warrants of, because earlier the de facto Prime Minister Netanyahu, John Glant and all others who were actually involved in these war crimes, their arrest warrants were actually ready but not issued.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. Thank you very much. Actually, partially you have already answered the question, your own question. You see, the attitude, the influence of the Israel lobby, no matter what OIC intends to do, is very obvious. I mean, the findings of Chief Prosecutor had been there, I think, since May 24th, probably submitted his report. And there's no implementation as of now. But regarding his misconduct, the investigation was already started.
Yes.
So it's very obvious where the leads are going to.
Definitely.
So, okay, as Dr. Khattak Sahib has also mentioned, that this is, you can say this is an endeavor in that direction, but I don't think so any material output can come out of all this. If you see in the larger perspective, already the alignment has been set. If you see their dispute going on with Lebanon, already the bait has been forwarded. I mean, you can say in a way that Biden government will be given a gift of ceasefire, and Mr. Trump will have a welcome bouquet because of this, and maybe the trade-off is settlement in the West Bank. You know, their intentions are very clear, the alignments are very clear. So effectiveness of this effort, because the whole Muslim world is so much divided in their own interests. let's say, for example, for the purpose of discussion, let's go a step further. Even if this is implemented, and assuming that Prime Minister Netanyahu visits one of these member countries, will anybody is going to implement that arrest warrant in that country?
I doubt really.
Thank you very much. So this itself speaks for itself, that the effectiveness of this effort, to what extent it will go. So it's very obvious.
So, by your point well taken, Dr. Sajid, when Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called the world for suspension of the Israel's United Nations General Assembly membership, but nothing happened at that time. Would anything be on cards when OIC Arab League determined to work to mobilize international support for suspension of the Israel's membership and acceptance, wholeheartedly acceptance of the Palestinian UN full membership?
At the United Nations, there is discrimination between Israeli state and the Palestinian state. We have seen that Israel was given full member status in 1949. Until then, since then, Palestine is deprived of its right. And I think the problem is not of the support of the members of the United Nations, because they have recently quite evidently, you can say, supported the Palestinian membership for the United Nations. But the actual problem is the US veto power, because we have seen that in 2012, the United States veto in the United Nations Security
That is
Council.
already discriminatory throughout the history.
Exactly,
really.
because the process is that first they will have to get 9 votes in the United Nations Security Council with no veto. After that, the same discussion will be brought to the United Nations General Assembly, and there they will need to have a 2/3 majority in order to become a full member of the United Nations. But the problem is that the United States alliance with Israel was there, but it is now badly exposed given the you can say blatant support and the indiscriminate, because the United States of America is not only supporting Israel in terms of their military support, their intelligence support to the Israel in this war, they are also supporting and protecting them at the United Nations as well. Because previously there were 4 resolutions passed.
All out diplomatic support is there for
exactly,
Israel by the United States.
Exactly, and the United States also vetoed 4 resolutions in the recent past with respect to the war truce in Gaza. So this means that until and unless the US decides whether Palestine
even
will be given
even one passed when it abstained, and that was also not implemented, unfortunately, in letter and spirit. No doubt, your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, how Israel imposed the genocidal war that will stop? Because when it accept the few, including the France, the voicing to stop arms support, arms supply to Israel, but majority of human rights champion Western countries, including the United States, supplying the lethal bombs and the missiles, and Germany sending the variety of arms and ammunitions. The UK is supplying the F-35 parts, and few Asian countries, including India and others, are supplying not only the drones but also to the manpower, the soldiers, to Israel. So how it is going to stop, or it will ever stop Israel from this genocidal war?
Faisal, thank you very much. This is a very important debate going on, and I feel that from my analysis, the way the Netanyahu has conducted this war in Gaza and in other parts of the region, I don't think so that ending this war is likely to be happening anytime soon. And if you have a look on the war objectives of Prime Minister Netanyahu and his defense minister, they said in the beginning, and those have been re-emphasized. And unfortunately, just yesterday and today, the statements from the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has said that the United States will make sure that October 7 never happens again. So these are now the indicators to pick up that whether this war in Gaza would ever end. And from my perspective, the war aims, which have now been refined and redefined by Prime Minister Netanyahu, is that Hamas should never return to Gaza. The Israel would control the entire Gaza from the river to the sea, including the Rafah and Philadelphia corridor. So that means till the time they are absolutely sure that Hamas has been entirely decapacitated, the war in Gaza would continue. Similarly, they have said that unless the Hezbollah is decapacitated and is unable to fire rockets on Israel, they would continue their war in Lebanon. And Prime Minister Netanyahu just few days ago had said that Israel has now regained its air supremacy in the entire region. So nobody can challenge the supremacy of Israel anymore. And we have seen renewed attacks in Syria, in Lebanon, and US and the UK's together have attacked somewhere in Yemen to decapacitate the Houthis' capacity of firing missiles. We've also seen occasional attacks in Iraqi militias. So unfortunately, we started from Gaza and the war has been escalated, engulfing almost the entire region. And now Netanyahu is also giving a bait and a trap to Iran to provoke them to an extent that Iran also retaliates or involves into some sort of thing where the Netanyahu has to retaliate and also involve the United States in a response against Iran. And if you have a look on the US grand strategy for the Middle East, that has always been, and now we can discern what the United States wants actually. It is, yes, the security of Israel has always been there, but now it is the supremacy of Israel. And that is through the hard power and the military means. So from my perspective, by all means, Netanyahu is hell-bent even to include and involve Iran in some sort of confrontation by inviting United States to respond.
Dr. Waseem, when you are talking about the entire region is actually engulfed because of the Israeli expansionist designs and they want to drag United States and want to have face-to-face with Iran. But the situation right now is that earlier there was some of the players like Egypt, the Qatar, the Jordan, and to some extent United States were actually trying to have some sort of a peace in Gaza or some of the activities going on in Lebanon as well. So how do you see Qatar's suspension of the ceasefire efforts? And just recently, Qatari Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has a visit to Turkey. And do you think that both the countries has a lot of influence when it comes to Middle East? So both the countries can do a lot, but right now Qatar has suspended its efforts. So how do you see that aspect? If Qatar is out of that race, Qatar was the main proponent to have peace in Gaza or in Lebanon or have to have some sort of a ceasefire, but that is not there right now.
Qatar's foreign policy has always been a mediatory role for all those conflicts in the Middle East in order to contain those conflicts and arrive at the negotiated settlement. We have seen in case of the Taliban's and very successful rapprochement with the United States and ending into Doha agreement. On the similar lines, Qatar has been using its good offices and facilitating the talks for Hamas and Israel and United States and Israel. And they were actually trying to come up with some sort of resolution whereby the conflict in Gaza is contained. However, I feel that the Qatar its mediatory efforts have now reached to a level of frustration where they have been disappointed from, or they're feeling the exhaustion from the year-long talks, and they have always remained inconclusive. And secondly, I believe that Qatar still wants to remain as a credible partner for peace in the entire Middle East. So therefore, they do not want to involve into some sort of pressure from the United States or from the Israel. So therefore, they have now very cleanly come out of the talks to allow the other parties to make their settlements on their terms if they wish to do so. But we have still seen that Egypt has remained engaged. Turkey has also shown some willingness. And at some point in time, Qatar would also come back to the facilitating role because Qatar's foreign policy has always been like this. So probably for the short duration of time, there's a level of exhaustion in Qatar's negotiating team, and maybe at some stage they would come back. This is my analysis.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken, Dr. Waseem. Tanveer sir, recently the UN Special Committee investigation report termed that Israel's war in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide. It's in line with the report published earlier in March 2024 by the UN Special Rapporteur Francisca Albanese, which clearly described that there are reasonable grounds to believe that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. International Court of Justice rulings and the observations are already there, which were never implemented. Would Israel be held accountable?
I don't think so. I don't think so. These reports and these efforts had been there, but Israel has been bulldozing all these international pressures irrespective, and they have been piercing through their objectives.
So do you think that the international system is failing?
Well, international, I wouldn't say, okay, I wouldn't say failing, but it has not been effective in most of the cases, especially the UN. But in this case in particular, without having US, with Israel having the full back of US, as Dr. Saab has mentioned earlier, they have vetoed every effort which has been done by the United Nations earlier also. So they don't, I don't think so these efforts would make, we should count or have any hope out of these efforts. It's the only hope is, when we're talking on this subject, is that the President-elect Trump's policy, no more wars, firstly, to what extent he means, in good faith I would say, okay, he means. Now the second question would be, to what extent would he be effective? You just mentioned about his Secretary of State, Mr. Rubio, Senator Rubio.
Yeah.
Now his already verdict to the ICC is very obvious.
Yes.
So even if he intends so, like for example, like I mentioned earlier that there seems to be a very clear alignment. For example, President-elect Trump had some negotiations or some discussions with the Israeli leadership, and he said, do whatever you need to do to end the war.
Finish the job.
Finish the job, right?
But it was because it was again an ambiguous statement.
Okay, all right. Now, I say
finish the war from the Israel side, or finish the war from the Palestinian side.
Peace in Middle East.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now let's say that he wants that there should be an acquittal till he takes oath as a new president. So probably there is some hope over there that if he means business,
it's a kind of a blessing in disguise, but it's more a disguise than a blessing, really.
Let's see how sincere he is in his intentions and how far effective would he be.
Well, at least the nominee for the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he is very much clear on his intent, how to support Israel rather than the Palestinians.
Mr. Faisal, don't forget the fact that end of the day, who runs Capitol Hill?
And we cannot forget that Marco Rubio's office, outside his office, not only the American flag is there, but the Israeli flag is also there. So, Dr. Sajid, do you not think that Israel, after historic genocide, war crimes and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, turned Gaza into rubble, forced innocents to flee from now again from northern Gaza? It might be the 6th or 7th time they are displacing from there. Israeli military siege ground and the air attacks intensified. Now Israel intended to depopulate at least the northern Gaza, to create some sort of a buffer zone and to have illegal settlements over there, because the vibes are very clear, whatever is coming from Tel Aviv right now.
That's right, and there is no contradiction in the opinions of the majority of the analysts that Israel is doing ethnic cleansing in Gaza, and this could be one of their policy that they want to turn Gaza into a buffer zone. That's true. But you know, one of the aspect of this ongoing genocide is that Israel from day one is facing identity crisis as well. They are very much, you can say, they have insecurity inside them, that because they have also faced, you can say, ethnic cleansing in the past, the Holocaust, etc. So it is human nature that if you have been through some sort of genocide, ethnic cleansing, or some bad incident, so this basically you can say haunts you throughout your life. So Israel is also in this identity crisis, and they have this fear that, you know, their state or their identity can again be threatened. So that is the reason why they are behind Hamas and Hezbollah and all those.
But Dr. Sajid, they are actually following more a Zionist approach rather than the Jewish
exactly.
approach. So this is really unfortunate. Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has ordered preparation for the annexation of the entire occupied West Bank ahead of the US President-elect Donald Trump taking office obviously in January 2025, when earlier in June 2024, the Zionist state confiscated at least 12.7 square kilometer, that was nearly 5 square miles of the Palestinian land in Jordan Valley, seizure of 8 square kilometer land in March, and subsequently the 2.6 square kilometer in February 2024. It means now they are going to just occupy or annex it and take it as a part of Israel. So How you see this intent? Because ultimately they have already done a lot regarding, they don't accept the independent state of Palestine, they are doing a lot on that, there is a genocide going on, there is a war crimes and ethnic cleansing. So what actually they want?
It's very simple. It's almost inching towards the philosophy of Greater Israel. For example, this far right Minister Smartridge, very clearly he has welcomed President-elect Trump, and he has said that he had been very considerate about Israel's cause, declaring Jerusalem as the US embassy, giving them a verdict of legitimacy of exclusiveness into and legitimizing the Golan Heights occupation.
Yes.
And he says that now occupation in the West Bank, he is very much optimistic that I understand the alignment is already there. Aligned. Curtail, like I mentioned earlier, they'll have a ceasefire in Lebanon with having enough guarantees from US keeping troops of any aggressive further hostile intentions by Hezbollah. And as a trade-off, they will expand. They will fulfill Trump's President-elect Trump saying no more wars, and as a trade-off, they'll go for these settlements.
So Dr. Sajid, what motive reflects the illegitimate state of Israel when its de facto parliament going to discuss a bill banning Palestinian flag? This bill includes 1 year imprisonment on raising enemy's flag, quote unquote enemy's flag, and at least $2,674 US fine. Earlier, de facto Knesset also declared the creation of the Palestinian state a threat to Israel.
I think it's the right of even the Israeli people to wave whatever country's flag they want in protests, because we have seen recently that there were protests inside Israel in favor of the Palestinians. So legislation, such kind of legislation is again undermining the people's right to express themselves freely. And I believe that Israel now has got such a military position and you can say an economic position that they would not like to confine themselves to the current boundaries, and that is the reason why they are in no mood to accept any kind of identity thing that is related to Palestine. So they would ultimately, their objective, as rightly mentioned by sir, that they have this agenda of Greater Israel, and that will not be fulfilled until and unless they occupy all the Palestinian territories, which they have been doing so in phases.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken, Dr. Sajid. Dr. Waseem, why United Nations is actually, we know that this is all the power politics going on internationally and the theory of realism and all that, and United Nations is getting lots of billions of dollars of funds from United States. But at least it's an organization which has the charter, and the charter says that to have a peace and stability and away from the conflicts across the world, this is the responsibility of the United Nations. So why United Nations is actually handicapped to take any action against the illegitimate state of Israel, when Tel Aviv actually ruined UN Charter, torn apart its resolutions, International Court of Justice observations and orders, killed around 220 United Nations Refugee Agency for Palestinian staffers, termed UNRWA as terrorist entity, accused Antonio Guterres of backing terrorists, branded him as a stain on the history of the United Nations, declared UN Secretary General as persona non grata, and barred him from entering Israel. Is it not enough to take action against the illegitimate state of Israel or make it accountable?
I think this has been very unfortunate. The state of Israel has targeted the United Nations and its Secretary General in person. So, but what at the end of the day we are witnessing, it is actually the destruction of post-World War II international system which the United States and the West themselves had created. We have seen the United Nations stands discredited and stands stunted. However, in the longer term, the US leadership as a responsible global unipolar power has also been stunted to a large extent because of its double standards. We have seen a hypocrisy by the United States and hypocrisy by the West. And we have never seen the P5 so bitterly divided as we have witnessed during these recent times. So what is the impact? The international system gradually is weakening. And in the anarchic world order, if the international system is weakening, that means, unfortunately, we will be going back to the situation from where the First World War or the Second World War started. Although this is the worst and the most dangerous scenario, and nobody should even think of it. However, the way we have seen the international institutions, those have been discredited with the aim of weakening those institutions, and especially the United Nations and ICJ and ICT, all. Unfortunately, these are just the double standards by the United States they have demonstrated. But at the same time, the other great powers, like the China, who has always come up as a peacemaker in the Middle East, like Russia, who has maintained a very balanced approach towards entire conflict in Gaza and the wider Middle East. So they both have come up as the peacemakers and peace mediators. So the transformation in the international system is now happening at a very rapid
Your
pace.
point well taken, because we have run short of time. So, Tanveer sir, US Biden administration still want to have ceasefire at least in Lebanon, at the Lebanon front. Might be just for face saving. Intend to implement the US UNSC resolution 7101. The Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri got that proposal from the US Ambassador to Lebanon, Ms. Lisa Johnson. Now it's under discussion while Israel keep on attacking Lebanon. Even UN peacekeeping forces there still don't want the ceasefire. How do you see the situation?
I think
Briefly.
Yeah, I think probably the ceasefire on the Lebanon front may take place. And like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a trade-off for their legitimacy and invasion, further invasion or to occupy the West Bank. They'll have a very good case to give a good diplomatic standoff gift to Biden administration and a welcome, a good welcome bouquet, like I said earlier, to President-elect Trump.
Very well said. Dr. Sajid, regarding the Trump administration, why Palestinians and the Lebanese are bracing for more devastation once the Donald Trump begins his second term as a US president in January 2025? It is because the Trump is all-time Israel's favorite. 60% of the Israelis jubilant at his win. 70% of the pro-Israeli voters voted for him. He was the one who, as Tanveer sir rightly said, that moved the US embassy to Jerusalem, recognized the Israel's sovereignty over the Syrian-occupied Golan Heights in 2019. So do you think that this worrisome thinking right now with the Palestinian and Lebanese is correct?
I think, the Trump election manifesto, he focused on that. He said that I'm going to end wars globally and US involvement in the global wars. But to my understanding, this election promise is not in line with, you can say, the history of the Republicans as well as Trump's personal and family relations with Netanyahu. Because we have seen that Netanyahu has very warmly congratulated Trump, and in his previous tenure as President of the United States, Netanyahu enjoyed very cordial relations and all the developments with respect to against the wishes of the even the Saudi Arabia, because all the Muslim countries were not happy about the shifting of the embassy in Israel. So we cannot expect, and also I would refer to one of the statement of Donald Trump in his election rallies. He said that if I come to power, I'm going to eliminate threat to Israel. So the threat to Israel in the region presently as portrayed by Netanyahu is Iran. So we can even expect that there can be some kind
Iran
of
or its proxies
exactly,
in the region, no doubt about that.
So
your point well taken, Dr. Sajid. Dr. Waseem, what would be the ultimate fallout of the US Trump administration's cabinet on the Palestinians as US President-elect nominated the former presidential candidate and the Senator Marco Rubio as US Secretary of State, who denounced actually the ceasefire called Hamas animals? Seems war will continue. Then the ex-anchor, the politician and the presidential candidate Mike Huckabee as ambassador to Israel, as he personally make a statement, and most of the times he said loud and clear that there is nothing like Palestine in Middle East.
Faisal, Israel would continue to enjoy the liberty of action as they have been enjoying previously. Irrespective which sort of government and which party comes in the United States, they would have a guaranteed support from the United States. However, the process of maybe the land grabbing and also the process of occupation of West Bank that should maybe hastened as the Trump is inaugurated, because the overall greater design of Netanyahu is actually to eliminate the Palestine, the name of Palestine once for all, and also to eliminate the threat of Hamas and Hezbollah and other such acts of resistance once for all. And maybe he would still be trying to induce Iran also, so that Trump, as he's impulsive also, he takes very bold decisions. Maybe he takes some sort of erratic decision, and the United States is also entangled for conflict with Iran. So that way, they would eliminate all possible threats to the state of Israel in very few months when the Trump is inaugurated.
Your point well taken. Thank you very much, Dr. WASEEM Ishaq, for being with us online. Thank you very much for your candid views. Thank you very much, TANVEER Sultan AWAN sahab, for being with us here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Sajid, for your liberative views. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, no doubt that the US President-elect Trump is going to take office in January 2025, and he is right now in process to have his cabinet. But unfortunately, the picks for the cabinet are seems to that there would be peace would be a distant dream in Middle East or the West Asia. Although Palestinians and Lebanese and all other regional countries are waiting anxiously for that peace and stability. On the other hand, Organization of Islamic Countries and Arab League had a very important session that was held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, though it was a call for peace and stability. And but meetings after the meetings are not the solution. There must have to be an action that must have to be visible, especially when it comes to the illegitimate state of Israel. The supply of humanitarian assistance is urgently needed to the Gaza people right now due to the Western world's arms supplies and continuously supplies to Israel. It seems that Israel is still unstoppable. Qatar has to play a very important part, but its suspension of the ceasefire efforts seems that it is going to be a vacuum in Middle East. International players, they have to work together, because the international system is weakening, and failing of the international system means that we are returning back to the Second World War or the First World War situation, and that is not going to be very handy for the world, really. And if the overall system fails, whole of the world has to pay the price for that, and Muslim countries has to do a lot for the Palestinians and Lebanese. So this is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.